Welcome. Here's part three, the true, beautiful. Third in a series of four talks on mystical dimensions of life on Earth. And these talks are offered in defense of reality and as a celebration of the real. In part one, I talked about space-time, where we stand, holding space where we stand, what space is, in our personal lives, physically, psychologically, mystically, everything from akasha to individuation. In part two, I talked about the Gaian mysteries, that in which we live and move and have our beings, the divine feminine intelligence, Gaia, that is this planet. And in part three, I will talk about the true, the good, the beautiful, what our circumstances draw forth from us, what rises from within us to meet the challenges of human incarnation at this critical juncture in human history. Just as the Gaian mysteries flow from space-time, the true, the good, and the beautiful flow from the Gaian mysteries. Vectors of Reality is the sequel. The Vectors of Verities of Being. Verities of Being is a series of four talks I gave in 2025. There's a sequel. Verities of Being address the question, what are we? What are we? What are humans? Verities of Being address the question, what are we? What are humans? Vectors of Reality addresses the question, what is this? What is this that we're living through? For example, in Verities of Being, Part 3, Shakta, I spoke of the deep feminine, the dark goddess, the dark green goddess, her many names, east, west, north, and south, including Fohat, her womb manifestation, how she moves through everything and everyone, animating all life in this world. Part 3 of Vectors of Reality is we're talking about the nectar of our humanity, the nectar of our humanity poured into the chalices of I am and we are, our clarity of mind, our kindness, our sense of wonder, our sense of justice, the very taste of the exquisite, all of it, the nectar of our humanity. And yes, once again, as with part one and part two, we are broadcasting live from inside the singularity. As articulated in part one and part two, we are operating within the context of four prophecies, two of which have come to pass, and two more which we are working on, leaning into, and holding space for. The two that have come to pass are the oldest of the four and the most recent of the four. In the 12th century, the great Hildegard of Bingen prophesied the planetary echo emergency we find ourselves struggling to mitigate today. And in 2010, I declared a singularity was imminent. And by 2010, I declared a singularity was imminent. And by 2020, it had arrived. Not the AI singularity, but a singularity in our own collective psyche, a singularity in the course of human evolution itself. And we are still in it. The two prophecies we are working on and leaning into and holding space for are both from the 1980s and were given to us by the legendary American sage Joe Miller. First, he said, we just had to make it through the next 100 years. early 80s, because by then enough children would be born just knowing some critical mass number, some hundredth monkey number accepted, hundreds of millions or billions. And their presence itself would finalize the great shift into the next iteration of civilization, a new age. And then a few years later, said that in this bright future, the women would lead. As we advance towards that future, women would lead. It would be women who led us into that new age and women who governed it. There's no end to what a living world will demand. Let's say it, Octavia Butler. I don't know if you know Octavia Butler. Hugo Award winner, Nebula Award winner, and AHB Image Award winner, author of dystopian science fiction masterpieces, including Parable of the Sower, mother of Afrofuturism. Shout out to the great Janelle Monáe, deeply inspired by book. In the January 2024 issue of The Atlantic, Taya Miller wrote, "We need Octavia Butler's conception of histofuturism now more than ever." Somehow she knew this time would come. The smoke-choked air from the fire gone wild, the cresting rivers and rising seas, the sweltering heat and receding lakes, the melting away of civil society and political stability, the light-year leaps in artificial intelligence. Octavia Butler foresaw them all. Butler was not a climate scientist, a political pundit, or a Silicon Valley technologist. The author of an imaginative and often disturbing speculative fiction such as Parable of the Sower in 1993. She was a Black woman descended from enslaved people in Louisiana, raised by a strictly religious mother in Los Angeles and educated at community and regional colleges, and besieged by feelings of professional marginalization for most of her too short life. Out of these challenging circumstances, and through the noise of the late 20th century America, Butler somehow heard a clear signal. The future would not be like the present. It would instead be a techno-juiced doppelganger of the past. That's Taya Miles in The Atlantic in January 2024. Here's just a taste of Butler's medicine. She writes, "Create no images of God, except the images that God has provided. They are everywhere, in everything. God is change, seed to tree, tree to forest, rain to river, river to sea, grubs to bees, bees to swarm, from one many, from many one, forever uniting, growing, dissolving, forever changing. The universe is God's self-portrait." It's a parable of the sower. That's all anybody can do right now, she writes. Live. That's all anybody can do right now. Live. Hold out. Survive. I don't know whether good times are coming back again, but I know that won't matter if we don't survive these times. And this last one then. In order to rise from its own ashes, a phoenix must first burn. Now, of course, we might not make it. We might not emerge from this singularity. It's only natural to wonder about the before and the after of us here on Earth. Professor Tim Colson, a leading zoologist at the University of Oxford, argues that if humans were to go extinct, octopuses have the physical and mental attributes necessary to become the next civilization builders. This is not a fringe opinion. It comes from his book on the universal history of evolution, and the reasoning behind it is worth taking seriously. Octopuses already possess advanced cognitive functions, including problem solving, tool use, object manipulation, ability to communicate with each other through rapid color changes across their skin, dexterity, curiosity, intelligence. Given evolutionary time, these enable them to construct complex tools and build an underwater civilization. But what makes octopuses genuinely extraordinary is their nervous system. Two-thirds of their neurons are not in their brain, but distributed through 8 arms, each of which can taste, touch, and act semi-independently. They are not one intelligence controlling 8 limbs. They are closer to 9 semi-independent processors operating in coordination. No other animal on Earth works quite like this. Coulson acknowledges, of course, it takes hundreds of thousands or even millions of years for such evolution to occur. This is from Astrophiles in May of this year. Also from Astrophiles, dinosaurs ruled this planet for roughly 165 million years. Humans have been around for about 300,000. The Silurian hypotheses, a real paper published by 2 actual scientists at NASA and the University of Edinburgh. It asks whether a technologically advanced civilization could have existed on Earth before humans and left no detectable trace. Their conclusion was sobering. Given how completely geological processes recycle the crust over millions of years, we generally cannot rule it out. 165 million years is enough time for a civilization to rise, peak, collapse, and be completely erased by geology. We would never know. There'll be, of course, as I mentioned, links with hyperlinks to all of these sources and Substack. There was a cigar store on the corner of 207th Street and Broadway. 207th Street and Broadway. It had a spinner rack of paperbacks right at the corner, right at the front door, in the corner, right next to the front door, next to the newspapers and magazines. And one of the tiers of that spinner rack held the classics, quote, classics, unquote. It was there I found Keats and Shelley and Edgar Allan Poe for less than $1 each. I was a prepubescent boy and very much on my own. But in the darkness of unknowing, Keats and Shelley and Poe led me to glimpse the poetical knowing. Keats wrote, "Truth is beauty, and beauty is truth. That is all you know and all you need to know." Keats died of leukemia at the age of 25. He had written for maybe 6 years. He had sold maybe 200 books. He was living in Rome at a villa on the Spanish Steps. It is now the Keats Shelley Memorial Museum. His last request was to be placed under a tombstone bearing no name or date, only the words, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." There. It is there. These talks This series of talks are, in a way, the culmination of a journey that began at that cigar store in Little Dublin, which is what my neighborhood was called by New York City politicians. That little cigar store with its spinner rack of pocket-sized paper book classics and spy novels. Oh yeah, that all started there. It has somehow become polite to talk to, it has somehow become impolite. It has somehow become impolite to talk about the truth on its own terms. If you say something declarative about the truth, someone will reflexively say, truth is relative, or you don't believe in an absolute truth, do you? That's a trap. But don't allow the issue of truth to be reduced to this false dichotomy of relative versus absolute. Look outside. If it's raining, it's raining. Where you are at that moment, it is raining. That's reality. A truth is awareness, recognition, acknowledgement of a reality. Yes, there are realms of belief and opinion, but truth and reality are independent of those realms of belief and opinion. What happens is that someone or some entity or some grouping reaching for more power or greater profit will be confronted with an inconvenient truth. And they will swiftly try to get that truth, that fact, relocated into the realms of belief and opinion. Oh, well, all truth is relative. After a while, it's bad for your career or your social status. The simply stated fact, the truth, reality. So many start wondering about it. There are three insights concerning the nature of the truth. All are from the 20th century and from three very diverse sources. The first is from Hemingway. When I turned from my teens into my 20s, I turned from poetry to prose. But in school, I had only gone as far as the third grade. I realized I didn't know anything about how to write a sentence that construct a paragraph. And as much as I loved Kerouac, commas and ellipses could only take me so far. And that wasn't far enough. So I turned to Hemingway. Rereading his greatest works taught me how to format sentences and craft paragraphs. But Hemingway also taught me one of the occult secrets of writing. The Movable Feast, published in posthumously published in 64. He moved on in 63. It's a marvelous book, autobiographical, a memoir about his time in Paris. And Hemingway writes, sometimes when I'm starting a new story and I could not get it going, I would sit in front of the fire and squeeze the peels of the little oranges into the edge of the flame and watch the sputter of blue that they made. Or I would stand and look out over the roofs of Paris. Don't worry, I said. You have always written before, and you will write now. All you have to do is write one true sentence. Write the truest sentence that you know. So finally, I would write that one true sentence and then go on from there. It was easy then because there was always one true sentence that I knew or I had seen or I had heard somewhere. One true sentence. Because then you're tapped in the power. Truth has an energy. Truth is and energy, a powerful energy, limitless. The second insight is from a book I bought at Samuel Weiser's some years before. This is Lower Manhattan. Still in my teens, a hardcover copy of Samadhi by Muni Sadhu, pseudonym. The book didn't resonate with me, too mental. But throughout the narrative, the author kept quoting fragments from some obscure text, the title of which did not register with me. Those fragments spoke to me directly. So I copied them out by hand. There were 40 of them. I left Moni Sadhu's book behind and just started studying those 40 fragments. Indeed, I kept that piece of paper, folded it up with me in my satchel for years. Soon after I got to San Francisco in 1978, I met the legendary American sage Joe Miller. And in one of our visits, he handed me a tiny pamphlet. I opened it up, and yes, it was those 40 verses. Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi had composed them in 1928. And the title of that tiny pamphlet, Truth Revealed. Awareness, Ramana says, awareness is the nature of reality. Without awareness of reality, can reality exist? Because this awareness hyphen reality itself, free from thought, exists as the source of all thoughts. It's called heart. How to know it? To be as it is, thought-free in the heart, the Hridaya, the heart of hearts, the sacred heart, is to know it. Awareness is all, the seer and the seen, the real and the apparent. The third insight is from a poem by the incomparable Maya Angelou. In June 1995, she was an honored speaker at the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. And she offered the world a poem entitled A Brave and Startling Truth. The brief is excerpt. We, this people, on a small and lonely planet, it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, then we will confess that not the pyramids with their stones set in mysterious perfection, nor the gardens of Babylon hanging as eternal beauty in our collective memory, not the Grand Canyon kindled into delicious color by western sunsets, nor the Danube flowing its blue soul into Europe, not the sacred peaks of Mount Fuji stretching to the rising sun, neither Father Amazon nor Mother Mississippi, who without favor nurture all creatures in the depths and on the shores. These are not the only wonders of the world. When we come to it, we, this people on this wayward floating body, when we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible. We are the miraculous, the true wonder of this world. That is when, and only when, we come to it. Maya Angelou's brave, startling truth is particularly poignant within the context of this series of talks, because as I said in the beginning, reality, which is under attack, our shared reality, our common reality, is the reality that took shape in the immediate aftermath of our victory in World War II, our victory over the Nazis, the fascists, the authoritarians. The good There is goodness in it. It is inborn, it is natural. Cooperation, community, empathy, compassion, kindness, these don't just exist in some percent of humans. Cooperation, community, empathy, compassion, kindness are evidenced in different ways throughout the natural world. Goodness is pervasive. Don't get me wrong. To romanticize nature as some kind of love fest is as diluted as characterizing it as all and only survival of the fittest. The real is so much more complicated than either of these fantasies. But it is very true and very important to acknowledge that in nature, throughout nature, cooperation, community, empathy, compassion, kindness, respect for diversity are all evident at work in the mix, from the micro to the macro. Survival of the fittest wasn't even Darwin's choice of words. Herbert Spencer, an English philosopher of the 19th century, best known for his adaptation of Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection to human societies, which is termed social Darwinism. He introduced the phrase survival of the fittest. Spencer's work, positing that those who dominate in society do so due to their evolutionary advantages. Spencer's work emphasized a laissez-faire approach to economics. Spencer's theories also had profound implications, particularly in the context of imperialism and militarism in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, where they were often misinterpreted to justify aggressive expansion and dominance of one nation over another. It's from an excellent essay by Richard Fitzgerald in 2023. Darwin's conclusion would be more accurately described as, I would say, survival of the most adaptable. Survival of the most adaptable. But even that, although not wrong, is too simplistic. Thomas Huxley, British biologist, anthropologist, grandpa of Aldous Huxley, who we all love for good reason. But Thomas Huxley came to be known as Darwin's bulldog. But as you can see, Huxley was carrying Herbert Spencer's water in promoting survival of the fittest, not Darwin's. At the time, Huxley was challenged by the brilliant anarchist prince Peter Kropotkin. In his Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution, Kropotkin wrote, quote, mutual aid tendency is so remote in origin and so deeply interwoven with all past evolution of the human race it has been maintained by mankind up to the present time, notwithstanding all vicissitudes of history. In the long run, the practice of solidarity proves much more advantageous to the species than the development of individuals endowed with predatory relation. The species in which peace and mutual support are the rule prosper, while the unsociable species decay. In his anarchist morality, Hutkin wrote, the feeling of solidarity is the leading characteristic of all animals living in society. The eagle devours the sparrow. The wolf devours the marmot. But the eagles and the wolves respectively aid each other in hunting, and the sparrow and the marmot unite amongst themselves against the beasts and birds of prey so effectually that only very clumsy ones are caught. In all animal societies, solidarity is a natural law, so far greater importance than that of the struggle for existence, the virtue of which is sung by the ruling classes in every strain that may best serve to stultify it. As I said, anarchist Prince Kropotkin. As I said, cooperation, community, empathy, compassion, kindness are evidenced in different ways throughout all the natural world. Associated Press, 2004, a pod of dolphins saved a group of swimmers from a great white shark off the northern coast of New Zealand. The incident happened when a lifeguard took his 15-year-old daughter and two of her friends swimming. The dolphins started to herd us up. They pushed us, all four of us, together by doing a tight circle around us. He explained that when he had attempted to break away from the protective group, two of the big dolphins herded him back. He then saw what he described as a 3-meter great white shark cruising toward them, but it appeared to be repelled by the ring of dolphins. So you get addressed in 2005. A 12-year-old girl who was abducted and beaten by men trying to force her into a marriage. This is in Ethiopia. Force her into a marriage, was found being guarded by 3 lions who apparently had chased off her captors. The girl, missing for a week, had been taken by 7 men who wanted to force her to marry one of them. She was beaten repeatedly, but she had been guarded by the lions for about half a day. They stood guard until we found her, and then they just left. They left her like a gift and went back into the forest. A wildlife expert said the girl may have survived because she was crying from the trauma of her attack. 19-year-old Kevin Hines decided to jump from the Golden Gate Bridge in September 2006. Miraculously, he survived the 25-story plunge, but the impact of the water broke his back and shattered his vertebrae, and overwhelming pain rendered him unable to tread water. But before he started to sink, something brushed his legs. A sea lion was circling him, nudging him, and keeping him above water. Authorities were able to get to him and pull him out of the water. Due to his injuries. A 12-year-old in Ontario, Canada, was on a camping trip with his parents. They decided to go out fishing in a boat. The boy stayed on shore. He was horrified when he witnessed the boat tip over and his parents struggle in the water and drown. He walked towards the nearest town to get help. But when the sun set, he realized he would have to spend the night on the cold, damp ground. As he lay there crying, he felt a warm, furry body pressed up against him. It was a shock. He thought it was probably a dog. Delirious from the ordeal, he fell asleep. And in the morning, he woke to find 3 beavers huddled against him across his body. They saved him from freezing to death overnight when the temperature had dipped below 0. Goodness is pervasive. Now, the debate between the Russian anarchist philosopher and Aldous Huxley's grandfather took place 2 centuries ago. But Kristen Olson's wonderful Sweet in Tooth and Claw, Stories of Generosity and Cooperation in the Natural World, was published in 2022. It elucidates the ways in which our understanding has advanced and provides perspectives on what we need to be working on civilization. I put some excerpts in here. Well, We exist in hybrid creative relationships with the rest of nature and are as much part of it as the raccoon lounging in the tree near my front door, or the grasses growing along the highway. How might our behavior change if we understood the extent to which cooperation within and among species undergirds the natural world and makes it thrive? Could we begin to see ourselves as partners and helpers, part of a greater fabric of giving, instead of as exploiters, and colonizers, and wreckers? Sweet tooth and claw, Kristen Olson. The beautiful. Well, a large of Botticelli's Birth of Venus hung in my mountains in my on Street in lower Manhattan in the early 20s. And then again in California, it was with me and moved with me from flat to flat throughout my late 20s and all of my 30s. I had never explained it. So I just felt it. It nourished me. It protected me. I didn't think about how or why. I just felt it. Looking back now, so much meaning reveals itself. Consider the painting against the historical backdrop, the historical backdrop, more accurately, 16th century. It is a pagan painting. It is goddess worship. This is Venus, after all, goddess of beauty, the love goddess, flowing red hair emerging from the sea, just as in the beginning life itself emerged from the sea. The birth of Venus and Primavera stood in defiance of the pathology that acted out with such cruelty and terror in the Inquisition, and that was tightening its grip at that time, Botticelli's time. And Botticelli was feeling Savonarola's chill breath on his neck. And so after Birth of Venus and Primavera, you'll see his painting took on a very different, still exquisite, but for persona. One afternoon at the aquarium, the Monterey Aquarium, sometime in the late 80s and early 90s, or early 90s, I don't remember. I roamed the halls, my eyes exploring the tanks through the floor of seasoned glass windows, taking in the wondrous of it all, the deep green of the slowly undulating kelp forest, the rainbow swarm of diverse fish species, the sharp-edged hardness of a multi-hued coral reef. And then I saw something I can see clearly and feel as directly as I did in the moment. It was some secret, a sea creature so dazzling, so scintillating, so blazing. I can't even identify what it was. I don't think it was a moon jelly, although they are exquisite. I don't think it was white coral. It might have been a white plumed sea anemone, but I can't be sure. I've searched, but I haven't found a photo depicting the creature that I saw, or at least as it was revealed to me in that moment. The whiteness, the pure, utter whiteness, a supernatural whiteness, as I said, scintillant, dazzling. And in that moment, I said to myself, in the silence of my psyche, this is proof positive. This is proof positive, irrefutable evidence that there is indeed a divine intelligence behind all creation. Nothing less. It's not as if I had harbored any doubt ever. I hadn't, but still, there was. Truth is like a mountain, massive, still, silent, unbreakable. Goodness is a river running through it all, like the Amazon, the fastest, like the Nile, the longest, constant, always flowing, always in one direction. But beauty is of a different order. She is herself a different dimension, that to which a different dimension than that to which goodness and truth belong. Beauty is mysterious. Truth is not. Truth wants you to know everything. Beauty is inevitable. Goodness is not. Goodness is reliable, uncomplicated, your best friend. In that landscape of human psyche with its truth mountain and its flowing river of the good, beauty is more like an etheric nervous system. It occupies the same space as truth and goodness, but is in itself a whole other dimension all its own. It runs through everything. I don't say everyone because, well, ignorance and pathologies. But this etheric nervous system, that is beauty, where beauty resides silently. It's in everything, everywhere, but now and then, here and there, like a chameleon shifting from one gorgeous color to another in a matter of seconds before your eyes. This etheric system shifts modes, and a portal opens, and we gasp, weep, and tremble and utter, "Oh, look, this is so beautiful." Or listen and gasp and weep and tremble and say, "Oh, this, listen, this is so beautiful." The portal is like an etheric temple that coalesces seemingly out of the air itself. The portal temple beauty shimmers in and out of sight, sometimes immersed in the primordial darkness. An etheric temple which shimmers in and out of consciousness, sometimes submerged in dream time, its very nest. She's always dancing. Beauty is always dancing, always moving on her own terms, following her own cryptic agenda. These are eight of collected eight different visions of the birth of Venus here, or Venus Aphrodite. Five of them flow from Botticelli's Birth of Venus, and the other two are representations by other artists. Of these eight, four are men artists, four are female artists. Some of them from prior centuries, some of them very recent, powerful studies. I opened I opened a series of talks by declaring that reality itself is under attack. This is not to imply that this is something that has never happened. Indeed, for millennia, that's plural, millennia, pathology and ignorance have struggled against reality, seeking to blunt the arc of human evolution. But there are moments, periods of time, eras, in which the battle could literally be won or lost with finality. And this is such a moment, arguably a final battle. This 21st century, the first of the third millennium, offers both the direst of threats and the brightest of opportunities. Looking back over the dangerous millennia we have already survived, there is medicine to be gathered, potent medicine, mind expanding, heart expanding, soul reviving medicine. This potent medicine is our heritage. It delivers both inspiration and a warning. Hypatia, Neoplatonist, mathematician, astronomer, Greek woman in Egypt, taught at the school of Alexandria, wrote books, influenced many of the great minds of her time, shared Plotinus with them, opened their eyes to to Greek mysteries and to the goddesses. Most of the other scholars had converted to Christianity to avoid persecution. She, she was depicted as a pagan with, quote, satanic wiles, unquote, who, quote, beguiled the people, unquote, and turned them against the church, quote, through her enchantments, unquote. She was dragged from her chariot by a Christian mob, stripped naked, flayed alive, and her corpse burnt in a church at the age of 45. Hypatia has a table setting in Chicago, embroidered on the back of the runner are four crying female faces from youth to old age that represent Hypatia in the Coptic style, suggesting that she stood for women of all ages. The image blurred appearance and the depiction of four limbs being pulled in different directions represents the brutality of her death and the conflict created by her religious beliefs. Chicago used a blood red color in its battle, along with a rainbow of tones, which suggests the dichotomy of violence and beauty in her life. A rendering of Hypatia's face, based on an actual Coptic weaving of goddess, peers through the capital H in her illuminated letter. Her mouth is covered in a band, which represents her silencing, as well as, quote, the deliberate muting of other powerful women. It's from the Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party. A century or so before Botticelli painted his Birth of Venus, steeped as it was in the deep feminine, Giordano Bruno, so this is 1600, Dominican friar, philosopher, mathematician, astronomer, was burned at the stake for articulating a philosophical worldview just as steeped in the deep feminine. From quotes from Giordano Bruno here. Divinity reveals herself in all things. Everything has divinity latent within itself, for she unfolds and imparts herself even unto the smallest being, and from the smallest beings, according to their capacity. Without her presence, nothing would have being, because she is the essence of the existence of the first unto the last. Noor Inayat Khan, daughter of the great Sufi teacher, Inayat Khan, raised in her father's Fazal Manzil house of blessing on the outskirts of Paris. She studied child psychology at the Sorbonne. She wrote children's stories for Le Figaro. In 1940, when the Nazis invaded France, the Khan family escaped to Britain. Noor joined the Women's Auxiliary Air Force and became a wireless operator. But in 1943, she was recruited by Churchill's Special Operations Exchange, the SOE. And the work of the SOE? Espionage, sabotage, aiding resistance movements. Noor Inayat Khan became a covert operative. Churchill's orders for the SOE were unambiguous. Quote, set Europe ablaze. Europe was under Nazi occupation at that time. Noor was sent in the occupied territory as a radio operator to aid the French resistance. She was betrayed by an informant, captured, sent to Dachau, tortured, and executed at the age of 30. She's recognized as a saint in Sufi circles. The files on her and the SOE, she was natural for espionage work. She was a natural for espionage work, being fluent in French and familiar with Paris. One of her instructors said she was interested in personalities capable of strong attachments, kind-hearted, emotional, imaginative. The instructor said the motive for her accepting the present task is apparently idealism. Oh, fancy that. She was longing to do something more active in the prosecution of the war, something that would make more call on her capabilities and perhaps demand more sacrifice. She told her captors nothing, and her last word was liberty. The last word she spoke was liberty. She was posthumously awarded the Cross of War, the Gold Star from the French, and the George Cross by the British. Dangerous millennia, not millennium singular, millennia. Wow, humans, thousands of years. Ignorance pathologies have been struggling against reality, against the true, against the good, against the beautiful. But this period we find ourselves in, this is extra. This is unique. I call it the singularity. We may or may not survive in a recognizable form. This is extra. This is unique. The planetary climate crisis, 8 billion humans when really the planet can really only handle about 2 billion of us. Too many. Consuming Earth's resources 73% faster than our planet's ecosystems can generate them. And in mind, debilitate, and add in the mind debilitating impacts of social media and AI, artificial intelligence, and social media. This is extra. This is unique in human history. We are either going to shift into a new civilization, as I said in part two, or we will find ourselves to be our own extinction level event. So, Bruno, Nurinayak Khan, some are called to become legend through powerful examples of martyrdom, but others are called to become legend by living long, profoundly impactful lives. For example, Jane Goodall and John Lewis both had long lives of meaningful work for our species and for our world. Both died recently. Lewis in 2022 at the age of 80. Goodall in 2025 at the age of 91. Long lives of legend. Jane Goodall, primatologist, anthropologist, UN messenger of peace. She says, quote, "We can't leave people behind in abject poverty. So we need to raise the standard of living for 80% of the world's people while bringing it down considerably for the 20% who are destroying our natural resources." That was, that was Jane at the 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development. In her 2025 Earth Day message, so very close to the end of her life, Jane wrote, "I do believe there's a window of time when we can at least slow down climate change and loss of biodiversity, but only if we get together and take action now. And without hope, we will fall into apathy and do nothing. Then we are doomed." John Lewis was arrested 45 times, 40 times in the 1960s as a leader of the nonviolent civil rights movement in the southern United States, and 5 times as a member of the House of Representatives, including twice protesting apartheid in South Africa and once protesting genocide in Darfur. This is not politics. This is human rights. He was beaten numerous times by angry mobs in 1961 during the Freedom Rides, and in 1965 on Bloody Sunday, Billy. The great historian Henry Louis Gates Jr. says, if courage had a name, it would be his. For John Lewis, voting was sacramental. And he shed his blood for us to exercise the most fundamental of human rights. John Lewis wrote, freedom is not a state, it is an act. It is not some enchanted garden perched high on a distant plateau where we can finally sit down and rest. Freedom is the continuous action we must all take, and each generation must do its part to create an even more fair, more just society. John Lewis wrote, you are the light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Release the need to hate, to harbor division, and the enticement of revenge. Release all bitterness, only love, only peace in your heart, knowing that the battle of good to overcome evil is already won. Who replaces them? How could anyone pick up the slack left behind by their departure at 80 and 91? Such beings are like old growth forests. You can plant trees, you can raise up a new forest, but you can't fast track an old growth forest. You can't synthesize the richness of that medicine. Holy, holy mundane, Wholy, mundane, and holy mundane, Holy, mundane. So far in this talk, we've honored three great beings who were martyred in defense of the true, the good, and the beautiful, and two great beings who have lived long lives of legend. But what about all of us? What about those who have not been woven into the official public narrative of our species? Those of us who have not obtained fame or even recognition. What is our role in all of this? What is our impact on all of this defense of reality, this celebration of the real? Sometime in the 1980s, I took a walk with Abdul Aziz Said, Professor Abdul Aziz Said, esteemed Syrian-American professor of international relations at American University, diplomat, peacemaker, advisor to governments, and a true, for real Sufi. He was visiting Northern California. He had spent an afternoon with my friend Joe, his friend Joe Miller, our mutual friend Joe Miller, who in turn arranged for me to take that walk. Having an in-depth conversation with somebody like Abdulaziz Saeed is like open heart surgery and brain surgery at once, but with etheric scalpels, etheric forceps, etheric retractors, making etheric decisions and etheric sutures with joyful peace as the anesthetic. There's so much I could say about that conversation, but for here and now, I'm only going to share this one profound moment. This was around the time I had asked Joe about what the hell was going on in human evolution and whether there was any hope for us. So I asked Abdul Aziz about it all too, and his answer has stayed alive with me all these years. He said, none of us really know how much of a difference we make. He said, we do not understand how much worse it would be without us, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, whoever we choose to be. He said, we have no idea how bad it or could be, or would be without us, without our being, without our simply holding space, without the hope that we carry inside of us, without our goodness, without our kindness, without our truth, without our vision of beauty, without our hope. It could all be so much worse. It would all be so much worse without you. Seriously, just by being alive and holding up the truth, the good, the beautiful in your own way, in your own voice, in your own thoughts and feelings, in your quietude, even in your own confusion and despair, you are contributing in mysterious ways you cannot comprehend to the redemption of our species and the rescue of our world. Simply by being yourself, by naming the true, by serving the good, by hallowing the beautiful, by creating, by offering, by simply abiding, bearing witness, taking action in whatever ways come to you naturally. Abdulaziz Said died in January 2021, at the age of 90. Another long life of legend. There's a story about Octavia Butler that uh, remembering my conversation with Dr. Said reminds me of. Somebody, a young person, said Butler, uh, asked Butler what the answer was to ending the suffering of the world. This is from Mary Retta in Wired in 2022. It's actually an article about about Janelle Monáe, Wired 2022. But anyway, young man asked Butler what the answer was to ending all the suffering of the world. Butler said there isn't one. And the young man asked, so we're doomed? Butler said, no. Then she delivered the words that would remake my understanding of the future. She said, there's no single answer that will solve all of our future problems. There's no magic bullet. Instead, there are thousands of answers, at least millions. Thousands of answers at least. You can be one of them if you choose to be. Failure to recognize the void nature of mind is the very source of samsara. This void nature, with its inherent compassion, is recognized when the mind, free from the influence of thoughts, awakens to the simple awareness of the present. That's Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche and Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones. Now, Dingo Khyentse, head of the Nyingma, Dalai Lama's Dzogchen teacher, giant of a man, physical giant. His profound contributions to the teachings are preserved in his collected works. I realized in preparing this talk that the end of this talk was actually in part in words of power and in I the Dragon. So I'm just going to seamlessly weave these passages in because they are how this talk ends. One night the phone rang. I was with Joe and Gwen. Joe had had a stroke. I was helping Joe turn in, get ready for bed. The phone rang, landline. Phone rang just as we were giving Joe his goodnight hug. The ring felt urgent and heavily loaded. It wasn't typical time for the phone to ring. It was our beloved friend and fellow lodge member A.J. Dickinson, expat living in Kyoto. A.J. had traveled and studied closely with the highest of the Tibetan teachers, and Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche was A.J.'s guru. A.J. was an accomplished healer and had done lots of body work on Dingo Khyentse and some of the other great ones. That night he was calling to tell us that Dingo Khyentse had just passed on from this life over in the Himalayas. Dingo Khyentse had been the senior Lama of the Nyingma tradition, builder of Sechen Monastery in Nepal, guru of the Bhutanese royal family, Dalai Lama's Dzogchen teacher. Powerful teachings, his powerful teachings have been preserved in several exquisite books. It was a significant moment. I glanced at Joe. Joe glanced at Gwen. Gwen glanced at me. I glanced back at Joe. None of us said anything. Dinko Kensei was he was profoundly important to all of us. And the three of us in that room, and the magnificent friend at the other end of the phone call, of course, we were and are all infinitely bound. It was the beginning of the end, and the end of the beginning. Dingo Kensei's death was like a signal. Both Joe and Gwen would be dead in a year. And the true government of the world was undergoing a changing of the guard. Uh, September 1991, Dingo Kensei Rinpoche passes on. September 28th, to be exact. August 1992, so 11 months later, Joe Miller passes on. November 1992, Gwen Miller passes. In November 1992, same week, same same day, because it goes on for several days, the cremation of Dingo Kensei Rinpoche took place uh, in the Himalayas. And there were reports, of course, from the cremation of, the marvelous kind of supernatural phenomena that occurs at such a passing of such a being. And but I just remembered back to that moment when we heard he was gone, and we all looked at each other, and uh, we just knew without knowing. And that night, I felt him leave. I felt Dingo Kensei leave. And I felt the gaping hole in the interior structure of the world close up behind him. And I felt the luminous web of life immediately begin to repair that tear in its membrane. Such a hole in the luminous web of life is repaired with the mystical tissue of those expanding hearts that are somehow bound up with the departing being and its karma. And so it was with Joe and Gwen as well. Although Joe didn't talk about it much, he did on rare occasions mention the 36. This is from Great Song. Joe said, who knows how many, if any, there are, some seated in this room, who are among the 36. It stated the world couldn't run without the 36. This is from the Jewish teaching for the Kabbalah. It is said that those 36 do not know what it is that they are here for, but they are acting as channels to let it flow through them. What should be here to keep the world in balance? So who knows? There are similar things in the Sufi tradition. They're called certain names. They're not usually known. There are always so many in incarnation to keep the balance so that the force will still be flowing through to humanity. Despite what they're doing at this intimate level, the ultimate is pressing through. You might say, how could somebody be such a one and not know it? Well, you could be deaf or dumb. You could be a dummy or a cripple or a politician. No, I doubt that. This is Joe talking. So you talk about 1,001 chance. Well, talk about the odds with all of the billions of people living on Earth. What are the odds that you're one of those carrying a lucky number? Maybe you've already come to another level, but you're being kept down at a point you are at so that that can flow through you. It's better than 1,000,000,000 to 1. Yet there are these, the 36. Great. The great of the great among painters like dancers are not just painters, they're philosophers. They are alchemists. The great painters and dancers are not just painters and dancers, they're philosophers and alchemists. They reveal They articulate that for which there are no words. Fallow, Carrington, Barrow, yes, Finney offer irrefutable evidence of this. So, of course, here at the close of our exploration of the true, the good, and the beautiful, I offer you these two powerful esoteric tomes compiled in paint strokes on canvas. Finney's Guardian of the Red Egg and Guardian of the Black Egg. And poet Karen Newberg constructs a worthy poetical frame for these paintings, these painting portals, I call them. She says, what else to do but what is expected? Safeguard the red egg. I hold aloft between my palms. I feel its pulsing inside the shell. Time to start the crack. Break the seal. The sun spills and warms. The black egg is restless to free its fire creature, dragon or phoenix. And then we'll see what kind of future there will be. Back part of this talk that was written years ago. A lot of the New Age malarkey and mumbo jumbo has sprung up about the subject of spiritual hierarchy. Let me demystify it with a jewel of insight I came across in the work of the great 20th century Sufi saint Inayat Khan, Noor's father. He says the whole secret of the hierarchy is in the expansion of the heart, unquote. That's it. Not robes, not titles, not lineages. The whole secret of the hierarchy is the expansion of the heart. The greater your capacity for love, the greater the container that your open heart offers the world around you. The deeper you move into the true hierarchy of the planet, the deeper you move, the higher you ascend. That's it. That's the whole secret. Nothing more. Path of love leads to a gateway high in the mountains. That portal is never left unattended. Wayfarers arrive there famished and near death. The gatekeepers provide each weary pilgrim with a loaf of bread and a full wineskin. And also each one a song. Then they point the way to the inner valley. But the land of the gods isn't what you dreamt it would be. It's simply a series of interlocking gateways high in the mountain. One by one, the wayfarers leave the road and tend to the gates. There are infinite trails leading into the mountain. There are infinite beings traversing the mountains. On those trails, there are infinite portals along those trails, but there are only a finite number of gatekeepers at any particular time. There are many opportunities. The rewards, however, are hard to understand, unless, of course, you have ever arrived, famished, and near death at one of the portals and were met there by a gatekeeper who taught you a song and showed you the way. At the end of each of these talks, I've shared one or two techniques from the 112 techniques in the Vijnana Bhairava. Devi's notebook, if you will, from her dialogues with Shiva, the dialogues of Devi and Shiva. 112 techniques. And it is said, you take any one of these, and they can take you where we all are going. So number 74 is, oh Shakti, each particular perception is limited, disappearing in omnipotence. Oh Shakti, each particular perception is limited, disappearing in omnipotence. They'll indulge me for a moment and just relax for a moment and let go of your shoulders, let go of your jaw, rest your eyes. Feel your breath wherever it is. And with awareness, you can breathe into your belly or into your heart. It's optional. Take your pick. Into your belly or into your heart. Inhaling, filling the belly, exhaling, emptying the belly. Inhaling, filling the heart, exhaling, emptying the heart. Just pick one. And on the exhale, you can hear internally ha, or you can, with the exhalation, you can sigh it gently ha. And with the inhalation, you can breathe in the sa with a whisper or silently feeling the vibratory shape, if you will, of sa. So you're breathing out ha, you're breathing in sa. I am that I am. And as you do this simple breath practice into the belly, into the heart, with ha on the out breath and sa on the in breath. And you could, yes, you could drop the syllables if you want to. Just be comfortable, be natural. Relax with it, flow with the breath. And just ponder as they come, your perceptions. It could be the perceptions of the moment in this practice. It could be perceptions that you've experienced over the hour of this talk. It could be perceptions from the day. It could be perceptions from this week. It could be something that arose in your consciousness that you haven't thought of in years. Whatever it is, whatever arises, just be aware of what is it that it arises from, and then see how it comes and it presents itself. It may lead to other perceptions or other thoughts, uh, and then it disappears into what? Devi says here, into the omnipotence. Shakti says here, into the omnipotence. And there's a lake in Kashmir. There's in the great texts of Kashmir Sufism. There's a name for that lake, but I always think of it as the lake in the true romances of Arthur, in which the Lady of the Lake holds up Excalibur out of the waters. That lake, the deep lake of intuition and omnipotence. Sometimes in these practices, they'll call it the beneficence. In this instance, they're calling it the omnipotence. It's a vast reservoir of power that you are a part of, and it is a part of you. It is always accessible to you and I with our next breath, our next exhalation, our next inhalation, the space between one thought and the next, in the silence. It is always present and always accessible to us. And the more we open to it, the more we understand that it is an omnipotence, a beneficence and an omnipotence that can't be subtracted from or added to or ever harmed or erased or lost. It's yours and you are its forever. This is us. This is our being. So just breathe with me into your belly or into your heart for a few more moments. Ha on the out breath, Sa on the in-breath. Feeling each perception, one after another, being absorbed into the omnipotence. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your patience. Fourth and final presentation will be in July. It'll be next month. Oh, that one will be both online and in person.